So, unfortunately, Michaela is not in this call, in this webinar. She'll actually be in one of the later webinars. So she's not, despite her kind offer, she's not able to answer any questions directly now. But we are very curious about your reaction to what Michaela has presented. We selected the we invited Michaela specifically because of this very structured, strategic approach that our colleagues in Austria are taking. There's no evidence of a kind of a path dependency. There's no evidence of simply trying to carry forward existing structures. No, this is a fundamental re-examination of the way in which the networks are structured and the way in which the networks should function in the future. And this is a point that Kirsten made at the start. This is a point that Inga has made repeatedly. You know, this is a process of, you are shaping the future. This is not about defending the ways of the past, but actually looking forward and looking at the new opportunities which exist. And again, in the context of our e-discussion, our Google Docs, this issue of careful planning came through repeatedly and comes through. This question of the fact that, there are new challenges, and these new challenges need to be approached very strategically with careful planning. But of course, what we also see in the feedback that we're getting in the Google Docs is there's lots of questions being raised. Inga has dealt with many of the issues of definition, but there are ongoing questions, big concerns, for example, about capacity. I mean, great, do the strategic planning, but then you've got to make sure about the capacity. That's about resources, but also there are additional layers of strategic planning with respect to capacity development. Is it simply an issue of recruitment, or are you aiming to be building capacity over an extended period of time? Are we talking about evolution here, or are we talking about revolution? So what we've got about what I'm going to propose is that we have 20 minutes now. 20 minutes. Can I do the calculation? 20 minutes of discussion through until about 12:15. Yep, then we'll break for an hour for lunch, and then we'll return to discuss advisors. But 20 minutes. The floor is open. I see already that we have a question in the chat from Miriam Erhard in Germany. Miriam, would you like to ask your question? We'll make your point.
Thank you, Mark. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I'm quite new in this field, and sometimes I'm struggling with the terms, and therefore my question is: I've heard CAP network, National Rural Network, and Agricultural Knowledge and Innovation System, and my question is: what are the characteristics of each of them, and the tasks, and also how is it interrelated? I can't capture it clearly in my mind, so maybe you can help me.
Miriam, thank you for being so honest. That's fantastic. This is precisely what this webinar is about, to make sure that we have a common understanding of those basic concepts. Inga, clearly this is an opportunity for you to clarify these concepts.
Yes. In the current period, we have the national rural networks. Their tasks are described in the legislation, but to say it in a nutshell, they are there to accompany the rural development program and to exchange experiences between the countries. So these national rural networks have regular meetings, I think 3 times a year, where they come together, the different member states, and they learn from each other. So this is really to accompany and improve step by step the rural development programs. Similar, the EIP network does this exactly to improve innovation, operational group calls, etc., innovation support services, etc. So they are part in most cases of these national rural networks, but there are a few countries that have absolutely separated this to give it more importance and more weight, but they fall under what is now called national rural networks. Now, because this networking was so useful in the two former periods, it has been chosen for the next period to further network, not only for the part of the CAP that is rural development, but also for the first pillar and for the sectorial measures. So what we will have now in the future is a CAP network, which will of course continue to work as we did in the past on the rural development part, but will have further tasks. And one of the tasks Mark mentioned is indeed also monitoring and evaluation. So in fact, the term National Rural Network in the past is being replaced by CAP network in the future, but with a broader scope of activities. And these tasks are detailed in the legislation as well, the current legislation as in the future legislation. As I said, or Kerstin said in the beginning, there's not so much change to the tasks. It's about fostering innovation, fostering knowledge exchange, giving good examples. All these things come back in the work now for the CAP network for the next period. And AKIS, as you see, is a strategic approach which member states will need to describe, and the presentation of Miriam was really very illustrating how this should be done. Really the rethinking of the whole system of how our knowledge flows, where does it come from, where does it go to, what works well, which measures are good, which measures are bad. So making this fundamental rethinking of the system, looking to the weak points, the strong points, etc. And this AKIS strategic approach, once we've gone through this process, accompanied by the many people who are involved in this, so this will take 1 or 2 years definitely to come to a good solution. This will go into the CAP plans, and this will translate into, and Miriam showed that, into a number of interventions. The things where they have needs, they will translate that into certain interventions. For instance, if the advice in the past was not covering sufficient fields or was administrative too burdensome, you can change this and make your new intervention much more flexible and much more adaptable. So the AKIS system is the system of all these people who are involved in knowledge production and using, and the AKIS strategic approach is the strategy to take for the new period about how to improve the knowledge flows within this AKIS system. I hope this is clear enough.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Inge. I think now it's getting interlinked, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Miriam, there's lots of very interesting material online as well. The most easily and best organized is on the EIP-AGRI website. Inge's already referred, for example, to a seminar that was held last September on CAP networking and on the CAP strategic plans and networking, etc. So I really suggest or recommend that you take a look at some of the resources which are available. I see also we have 2 colleagues with hands up. First of all, I see Stendal Jesper from Denmark, and then after that will be Patrick from Ireland again. So please, first question or comment.
Hey, Mark. I wasn't aware that my hand was raised. I joined the meeting. I joined the meeting an hour and a half late. I had connection issues. But I'm Jesper from the Danish Peng Agency, the Danish Agriculture Agency. I I'm also new to this field. I haven't been working on this before, but I have a widespread experience from the Danish paying agency from the last 7 years. So hello, everybody. Sorry for joining late. I was trying to connect. I'm here now, and I haven't got any questions for now, so I'll just be listening.
Cool, Jesper. Thanks for joining us, and maybe sit on your hands and try to avoid sticking them up again. Okay, Patrick.
Thanks, Mark. So maybe this is a little bit of road testing on my behalf. So some of the thoughts that we have been putting to looking at the innovation support service, or the innovation strand of the related to the CAP network, is, first of all, we were thinking about how to structure this activity, and there's some interesting information in the Austrian example there. So the first thing we thought about is that because there's such a myriad of objectives related to CAP, that maybe there's some thoughts that to get an innovation support strand up and running, then maybe you need to make some choices just to get matters off the ground. So you need to set a direction. So your innovation support strand could have a focus, and that focus could grow, but maybe, so you would select some particular challenges or issues that were quite important maybe for your own member state. And then what was needed then was to operationalize activities that would relate to this direction setting, and that would involve people who would have expertise in actual knowledge exchange. Now, they could be already within organizations and funded, or they could be expertise that need to be funded and brought into the system. And then what we saw when we went to look was a sort of a methodology that could support knowledge exchange, and that would allow a consistent type of delivery of service. And we went searching in sort of Horizon 2020 activities, and just because it was kind of local or related to Ireland, we found a marine related knowledge exchange activity, and I just shared the example there. And then we thought, well, oftentimes what happens in kind of this type of innovation strand activities is that people come together, they meet, they work together, and they find out these are the ideas we'd like to work on, and then they're left with the idea, well, where do we go for the funding pots to actually operationalize something? And sometimes the funding pots are, in a disparate of organizations based on research or innovation, and it can be quite a task to activate or access that funds. So we thought then that maybe an alignment of even a seed fund opportunity, because we saw ideas in various Horizon 2020 projects where some of the innovation action projects would carry a kind of a separate fund that would allow, like, for example, the Fair Share project for farm advisors has a fund activity to allow activities off the ground. So that's where we are with our thinking, and I suppose I'm just saying it today, being a bit open. It can be shot down as much as it wants, but I wanted to try and put it out there and see what people thought, and give a little bit of background of where we got some of our ideas from. So I'll just leave it there, and maybe that could be useful.
Patrick, thank you so much for that. Again, that's precisely what we were hoping to use this webinar for. People ready to put their ideas out there for others to respond to. You've supported that also with the link in the chat as well. So would anybody like to respond directly to Patrick? I can see that Inga's been taking notes, and I'm sure that she's interested to respond. But is what Patrick's saying, is it kind of resonating? Is it sounding something feasible or realistic in your own context? And please, if you want to put your hand up, that would be great. Or to write anything in the chat. Or just open the microphone and speak. Okay, I'm going to invite Inga to respond then to what Patrick's just said.
Yes, I would like to refer to some signs about how innovation is coming into place. And in fact, the top-down approach of saying we will cover this and that theme is most of the time not bringing up the grassroots ideas. Now, I understand that, and I also spoke about it in my presentation, that there might be indeed some issues where you want to focus on because you have a certain problem. But this is not, in my view, to be done at the level of the Innovation Support Service. They should be there to capture everything and to be in good contact with the managing authority, making the calls. And of course also with the policy makers who have certain issues that they want to be dealt with. Ireland is a very good example. You have this protection of the hen harrier and the protection of the freshwater pearl mussel that you said this is something we're going to put a lot of money in it and have a big operational group to solve the problem. But at the same time, and that's what you're doing, you also have open bottom-up calls where anything can come in. So this is for me really the ideal situation, that you mix the two, that you get these bottom-up innovative ideas, that you don't lose them, and that you have also calls for specific focus areas that you would want. But this is not what needs to be done at the level of an innovation support service. This is working through the calls that you make. The Innovation Support Service would rather be there to capture all ideas, to interlink persons, to bring experts in, to, as you say, operationalize. Where's the funding? If you say, where do we go for the funding pot? That's what they should be able to help you with. And I give the example of the EIP network in Germany. They have 2 times per year a meeting where the innovation broker of all their regions, and it's not only Germany, by the way, we have other countries who are doing this also, but I just give the example because I was just thinking about it. So they bring these innovation brokers together so that they can better exchange on how to fill an application, which funding sources, etc. It could be for an operational group. It could be an issue for maybe some national innovation funding. It could be an issue for Horizon Europe funding, but you also have Interreg, you have regional funds. And here I would advise you, Patrick, to listen to the September meeting, first day. This innovation support service there showed the multitude of funding sources they are working with. So this is how the funding can be found with the help of this innovation support service. And then on your last element on methods for knowledge exchange, there are definitely many, and I don't want to go into depth on that. It's always, the principle is always bringing people together and not only doing presentations, but also like we are doing, having interaction and breakout groups and working around a number of questions so that everybody can come forward and can play a role, whether he is talkative or less talkative, let's say. So there, I think there are many things, and maybe you have a very good one in the Marines. I have no clue, but I know that many ways are working.
Super. Thank you, Inga. In the last few minutes, there is a very specific question from Krzysztof in Poland, who will actually be speaking after lunch. And he's asking very precisely, how do you deal with the concept of AKIS coordination body, of the AKIS coordination body in the CAP strategic plans? I mean, you've referred, I think, was it to chapter 8 or something? What's the how is it actually dealt with? What needs to be included?
Yeah, so in the CAP plan, this so-called chapter 8 are the questions we are asking about what will be your AKIS strategic approach? How are you going to organize the interlinkages between your different knowledge users and producers? So those questions are there. How are you going to go from a separate farm advisory system to advisors who are integrated in the AKIS system? Now, we don't speak about FAS, Farm Advisory System anymore, we speak about AKIS. So we also have a question on that. We have a question on innovation support services, because that's new. How are you going to organize that? And then, there's a fourth question that I now lost. There will also be questions, 2 questions around digitalization, because that's also part of the cross-cutting objective. And all that is under chapter 8. And the coordination body is really very simple. It's in chapter 7, and it's just saying who will be the coordination body in the member states, so that we from the Commission know who to talk with if there's any issue around AKIS. We will probably, but that's too early to say, we did that at the time when the FAS started. We also had meetings with these AKIS coordination bodies in a kind of expert group. So we might also do that, but this is all too early to say. We now have this Horizon project that will work on AKIS constructions. So most probably it's not needed anymore, but we will see as time comes what is needed. But in the CAP plan, it's really very simple. You just say it's unit XYZ in department ABC, or the name of the person even who is responsible, and there's nothing more. And if this changes because the staff has changed, then you just make a notification and say, listen, our coordination person will now be Mr.
X. Thank you. Thank you, Inga. Inga, there's also, sorry to interrupt, there's also a very specific question from Pavel in Poland. Is actually saying, well, what is this document that you're talking about? I think you're talking about the template which the managing authorities are starting to work with for elaborating their strategic plan. Is that right?
Exactly. So there's a structure in how you're going to, as a country, deliver all this information on the first pillar, second pillar, and sectorial elements. You're going to deliver this in a certain format, and that's what we call the CAP plan template, and that's where we are referring if we say section 8 or section 7 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The SWOTs, for instance, will be in section 2. So the SWOT for the cross-cutting objective will be in section 2.
Mm-hmm. Super. So we've also got some nice sharing of information and links in the chat as well. Karin's been sharing some links, but I see actually that Hannah in Estonia is making a rather interesting announcement that might be of relevance to this group. Hannah, do you just want to explain?
Hi everybody. There will be an event, international event, just to reflect to this Patrick's question that there is several funding opportunities, and we want to bring together different funding opportunities for our region innovators, just to know what is there and what are the challenges and bottlenecks. So you can join.
So you'll be sharing a link for that by email, Hannah, or how will you promote it?
Right now.
Right, but in terms of the link, you'll do it now. Okay, super. I can't resist but use the last 30 seconds, and please 30 seconds, for Inga to answer the question from Peter. Inga, what's your wildest dream to realize in the next 10 years? And then we'll go to lunch.
Yeah, we're going to. asked this question, but I'm happy to reply because I've become confident that we can do things. If you see where we stood in 2010 and where we are standing now, cooperation, collaboration within the countries, with the researchers, between the countries, we really made big steps in these last 10 years. So I think we will go along that path. And my wildest dream is, of course, that we don't end up in the scenario that SCAR 3 said, which in fact is very much becoming more and more in place, meaning that all the knowledge is being privatized by companies and there's no public knowledge anymore. They do the research and they keep it for themselves and they sell it with their products. And this is in fact the real reason why we went into this AKIS policy and the CAP, because we want to avoid that. It's only by uniting ourselves and sharing the knowledge within Europe that we can become strong. If we compare ourselves with the United States, I mean, they have one big repository of practice there. We have to still build it, but we are doing this. We are making steps for a new knowledge reservoir that is interconnected with all these AKISs in the countries. We're going to try to have these AKISs in the countries better than before. So my not so wild dream, because I along the years have become quite confident that we can do much more than what we think. And there's always this fear in the beginning of, ooh, something new, will it work? And it's going to be complicated, etc. But I think we will realize better AKISs, better interconnection, an EU knowledge reservoir interconnected so that you can all profit from each other's knowledge and have again public knowledge, so that we're not dependent on these big multinationals like what we see in other sectors, the Amazons, the Googles, this is what's happening also in our sector. If you interconnect the agri-food sector, there are only 10 big players. They all have sub companies, etc., but they really rule us, and that should not be the case. And I hope that we can avoid this, and that we, by working together, it's lunchtime, that by working together,
Inga, thank you very much. That was slightly more than 30 seconds, but obviously it was very dangerous inviting you to answer the question.